When Spanish explorers first landed in the Americas, they weren't searching for new lands, they were chasing a shortcut to Asia. But their perspective quickly changed. What once seemed like an obstacle became a gold mine, literally. In today's video, we will explore the brutal truth behind the Spanish colonization of the Americas through the encomienda system, African enslavement, and the racial caste hierarchy that emerged from centuries of imperial rule. Let's get started. After the Treaty of Tordesillas in 1494, Spain claimed almost the entire New World for itself. By the early 1600s, its empire stretched across the Caribbean, Mexico, South America, Florida, and the American Southwest. Their first goal? Gold and silver, and they found it. In fact, over the next 300 years, the mines of Spanish America produced more gold and silver than the rest of the world combined. But as the easy wealth dried up, Spanish settlers began shifting their focus to agriculture, especially the lucrative cultivation of sugarcane and the spreading of Christianity. To power these plantations and extract wealth from the land, the Spanish turned to a system of forced labor, the encomienda system. Under this system, Spanish settlers were granted control over a group of indigenous people by the monarchy. They were expected to protect and Christianize them, but in practice, they enslaved them. This system fueled both agriculture and mining, especially in the silver mines of Potosi, Bolivia. There, workers were forced to carry heavy loads of ore through tunnels 600 feet deep, some barely wider than a man's shoulders. The labor was dangerous. Many never returned. In 1550, the Spanish officially ended the encomienda system and replaced it with the repartimiento system. On paper, this made native workers legally free and entitled to wages, but in practice, little changed. Native peoples were still forced to work in agriculture and mining for weeks or months at a time. Abuse remained rampant, and the exploitation continued under these new rules. Between forced labor, harsh conditions, and the spread of European diseases, indigenous populations plummeted. In 1550, there were around 2.6 million natives in central Mexico. By 1600, that number had dropped to just 1 million. This labor crisis pushed the Spanish to seek another source of workers, this time across the Atlantic. To meet labor demands, Spain turned to Africa. Working with West African kingdoms that practiced slavery, European traders began forcibly transporting enslaved Africans to the Americas through the Middle Passage. By the end of the 16th century, around 76,000 Africans had been shipped to Spanish colonies. Tragically, a similar number died on the voyage. Between 1500 and 1800, roughly half of all the immigrants to the New World were enslaved Africans, brought to work in mines and plantations under brutal, inhumane conditions. To justify this widespread enslavement, Europeans depicted African societies as primitive and uncivilized. But this couldn't have been further from the truth. Most African societies had complex economies, political systems, and rich cultural traditions. Still, like the Native Americans, enslaved Africans were subjected to relentless labor, disease, and high death rates. By 1550, about 100,000 Europeans lived in New Spain, a small minority among millions of indigenous peoples. But there was a major imbalance. European men outnumbered women 10 to 1. This led to widespread intermarriage, often forced, between Spanish settlers and native women. Over time, this gave rise to the casta system, a racial caste system that rigidly categorized people based on their ancestry. This hierarchy dictated one's status, rights, and opportunities, entrenching inequality for centuries to come. The encomienda system, the use of enslaved African labor, and the development of the casta system were all central to how Spain built and maintained its empire in the Americas. These systems weren't just about economics. They shaped societies, relationships, and identities across the region, with consequences that lasted well beyond the colonial period. Understanding how they worked and who they affected helps us better grasp the foundations of inequality and social structure in the Americas, both past and present. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time.